So we will take you on a journey for the next hour, and it will become more clear to you later why I'm saying journey. We will start with the innovation hubs and how we supported learning in the innovation hubs and give you a little bit of context. Then we will present to you how we used methods and tools in the learning platform. Then I will hand over to Stephen, who will give some context regarding agroecological transformations and how we came to recommendations from the innovation hub. And we will end with a discussion with some of our innovation hub facilitators. And yes. So as you know, and as Bertrand already has presented, we have these 11 very diverse innovation hubs in the project. And they already existed more than 4 years before the project started. So they came in with a very rich knowledge already. And in the project, so Stephen, me, Gerda, and others, they function like the connective tissue between research and practice. So we really were there to support the innovation hubs and to use the methodology to support learning within the hubs. And with reflection calls and workshops and learning histories, which is a methodology to really reflect on what is happening and what could be done differently. We work together with the innovation hubs. And in this way, we demonstrated what are the opportunities, but also challenges, enrich the knowledge base around these 11 innovation hubs. And we have a kind of philosophy in the project. And I want to just quickly guide you through the principles that we apply in the project, because we see us as a kind of temporary travel companion. So in the journey of the innovation hubs, who already existed for some time, we are there in the course of the project to support them and to give them tools and to think together what could be done differently, but also to just understand the context better in which they are operating. One of our principles is also that we create actionable knowledge, so knowledge that is useful for practitioners and for local actors. So not only making research for the sake of research, but really for people on the ground. This is our general learning cycle. I will not go into detail about what we exactly did, but we use this iterative learning cycle with the innovation hubs to have several rounds of reflection within the project. And we are at the moment creating a handbook for facilitating co-innovation processes that we can also share when it's ready, where we very in detail explain the philosophy that we applied in Agroecology-TRANSECT and how it came into action. So explaining the tools and methods. And this is actually a slide from one of our Innovation Hub facilitators, Alexandra Waldman from the Slovenian Innovation Hub. And she once presented some benefits that the project brought to her. And I want to highlight these 3 points that she was mentioning. For her, the project really helped to get some more self-reflection and evaluating on the past activities that they were doing in their own innovation hub to also define future goals. Also, the interaction with the other innovation hubs helped her to access diverse knowledges from other contexts, and in this way also saw these diverse experiences. And also, she mentioned that the project gave her new opportunities to get more focus. So because we had these reflection calls, very in-depth discussions, this gave her sometimes a new focus or like a redirection of her mission. And in that way, she improved the activities and shortcut some potential mistakes. And now I would like to hand over to Stephen.
All right, yes. So yeah, my name is Stephen Leitheiser, also from Wageningen University. And I was involved in the work package in the project that was working on monitoring and evaluation of this learning process. So what we did was basically conduct an analysis of this learning process, which also fed into changes made during the project, so adaptive management, adaptive changes. But we also had the goal to learn beyond the project. So how could we organize other projects in the future? How could research better support these projects to realize these ambitions that we see? So that is the sort of basis of our policy recommendations that I will present in a little bit. And first, I want to zoom out a little bit to the context of what these kind of projects like Agroecology-TRANSECT are attempting to do in Europe. So we see there's these great expectations that we have societal challenges like climate change, biodiversity loss, and we would like these research projects and innovation projects to contribute to that. So it's not just about producing knowledge anymore. It's about missions. It's about trying to achieve transformative changes in society and in the world. So this is requiring a new role for scholars. We're not just, again, producing knowledge. We're acting as change agents, or you could say boundary spanners, that are connecting different stakeholders and trying to lead transformational processes. And what do we mean by transformation? This is kind of a buzzword now that is thrown around a lot without always explaining what we mean by it. This is from a recent report from the IPBES, where they look at a transformative change assessment. So trying to really define more, what do we mean by transformative changes, and what kind of change is necessary to address things like biodiversity loss. And here we see, I won't go into detail, but really they look at the underlying causes of these challenges like biodiversity loss and climate change. And it's not just making little tinkering changes around the edges. It's really radical changes to the way we relate to each other and the way we relate to nature. So these are the kind of expectations we have now for scientists and for these projects. And again, this is saying here that transformation and transdisciplinarity are sort of synonymous with each other now, both in the things we assume they can do and the things we assume that or expect projects to do. So this was the context that our evaluation and our monitoring took place within, this wider context of transdisciplinarity, aiming for transformative changes. And what we see also in the literature is that there are tensions between the ambitions of these projects and what we actually can achieve in a short amount of time. So Darlene just mentioned actionable knowledge, so knowledge that is relevant to practitioners, helping them achieve their goals within existing systems and structures. So these are more pragmatic and tangible changes. And we have to balance this with also the desire to achieve these transformative changes that I just talked about there. These more significant shifts, not only in the practices, but also in the views that people have, the understandings of themselves in the world, and also in the structures that shape what is possible. So we have to balance these tensions between, on the one hand, more long-term, extended, and radical changes with pragmatic, proximate, and tangible changes. So we looked at then how did the project navigate these tensions. And essentially what we did was conduct a qualitative analysis, so through participant observation with innovation hubs, also with interviews that we did throughout the project. And we observed this process, this project governance of co-innovation that Darlene described. And we looked, how did that contribute to these outcomes that we wanted, this actionable knowledge and these sort of tangible results for innovation hubs? And then in turn, how did that contribute to societal effects that we desired? So agroecological transformation. Did we actually take steps in that direction, or were we more in line with sort of reproducing the existing systems and structures that we want to transform? And that, I won't go into a lot of detail about the paper, but we just had it published in Sustainability Science. And I'll just talk about some of the results, which then in turn inform the policy recommendations that we made. So what we saw is that in terms of actionable knowledge, big results were in terms of learning and sort of strategic adjustments. So the ways that people in innovation hubs, facilitators particularly, understood themselves in relation to their context and understood how they could exercise agency for change, how they understood agroecology. This was a big area of change that we saw across the project. We also saw that the things that innovation hubs do in their context were amplified by the project through resources, through knowledge, and also through legitimacy. So just being involved in the project gave a boost to the innovation hubs. But we also saw that in terms of these societal effects and really addressing these big challenges that we aim to in these projects, that there were still many barriers that limited these kind of changes. And so what we thought is that, this shows that there's structural barriers in research policy, but also in the wider food and farming systems that need to change in order for these transdisciplinary projects to be able to achieve the kind of changes that we want them to drive. So Guy will talk about the latter in a little bit. But we'll give some recommendations here for research policy, and that's also to be found in the brief that was able to be picked up on your chair. And this got cut off a little bit here, but essentially the risk, if we try to have in the current frameworks of research and agri-food policy to have practitioners and researchers come together to make these changes, the risk is that we just end up reproducing the problems through a distributed group of actors. So that, we need to have these two things co-evolve, right? So work with practitioners and researchers on the one hand, but also the institutional frameworks, political frameworks that they work with and need to evolve with them. And so we have, like I said, some recommendations for research policy. And that would first be, I think, a lot of the things that were touched on earlier as well in the session where Elisa was interviewing the various people from the social movements. So not necessarily more funding for transdisciplinary research, but better funding, better structure of that. So allow more longer term, slow processes where we can have changes in plans along the way and flexibility. It's not just planning and then doing everything that we plan, but also allowing room for planning by doing and making adjustments. And then, enabling actors that are engaged in these processes to more firmly participate in research. So enabling farmers, but also community and civil society initiatives to access funding and participate as partners. And that includes reducing some of the administrative burdens that limit those kind of partners from participating. And finally, we're not just needing to focus on technical innovations, but more importantly on political, social, institutional innovations, governance innovations. And actors can participate in these processes, which can in turn enable more of the technical innovations that we want to see in changes to production systems. And finally, linking research with policy. So this was something that came back in discussions with innovation hubs, is that we've now been doing projects like this for decades and we don't see the results being taken up in policy. So how can we actually make sure that these are used, are used in policy agendas to make and justify sometimes difficult decisions to address these big challenges? And enabling researchers to just go beyond focusing on publications and getting the next grant to really acting as these transformative change agents that we would like them to be. That requires some changes in the way science is organized and in the way monitoring happens and reporting happens in projects. And finally, there need to be mechanisms that integrate scientists and their research and the results into these decision-making processes and be transparent about how that is taking place. So now that's all one more. Yeah, I already mentioned that. Offer the transparency. But now we're going to invite some representatives from innovation hubs up here to have a roundtable. And we'll hear maybe some more concrete examples of some of these things that we discussed.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So I would like to invite Viara, Tamash, and Camille to the floor. So please give us a big hand for these three. So we will have a roundtable to reflect on what the innovation hubs have experienced from the learning platform, and we will go through three topics. So we will first talk about the benefits that the learning platform brought you. Then we will address challenges that you perceive in that, and then at the latest we will talk about, well, what can be done, how can we move forward from that. Viara, who are you and what are you doing?
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Vera Stefanova, and I'm working with the Society for Territorial and Environmental Prosperity in Bulgaria, which is a small NGO, but we work for more than 10 years now, even more, on for the benefits of high nature value farming systems, which in general means that we focus mainly on grassland systems, and we want to protect the biodiversity in these farming systems by allowing the farmers to continue their farming activities, but extensive farming activities and traditional ones, and also to allow them to find some innovations which can help them their day-to-day work, but also protect the environment and the biodiversity in their systems. And within this project, we are trying to test something which Matteo is not quite happy with, but the result-based agro-environmental schemes. And yeah, we discussed this, and I may say that yeah, it's a challenging process, which I will focus a little bit later.
I guess I continue presentation. So my name is Camille Cosmon, and I am both a farmer on the family farm and a farming advisor at Greenotech, which is part of the Agroecology-TRANSECT project. So what we do at Greenotech is mainly working with farmers on conservation farming and globally agroecological practices on arable lands, and I work specifically on organic farming with those farmers. So yeah, that's how I am part of the project.
Thank you. My name is Tamás Miglec. I'm a plant ecologist. I'm working for the Hungarian Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, which is often referred to as UNKI from the Hungarian abbreviation. And we are working in vineyards and orchards, and we are composing, testing, and assessing the ecosystem services of perennial cover crops, mainly. Yes.
Yes, thank you. So before we start with the questions, I would like to say that if you have some comments or questions in the meantime, please raise your hand, and then we can also give the word to the floor. And the same goes for you. If you want to react to someone, just show me your hand, and then we can moderate it. Okay, so the first question would be, what is an important benefit for you, for the innovation hub that you are with that comes from the learning platform? What would you say are the main aspects of that? Would you like to start?
Okay, so I think Alexandra have put it very well, and also Darlene showed it with kind of graph. It really helped us reflect on our activities in a more systematic way. I mean, seeing what are the good things, what are our achievements, outcomes, and then adapting our activities to those things which we really want to focus on for the next year. In as far as I remember, in the beginning, it was also very important that we had this outside view from uh, the working package leaders, which actually asks us questions that help us focus a little bit more on our learning process and what we are achieving. But I would also like to say a few words about, and I will give the word to the others, about the project as a whole, because actually in a country like Bulgaria, agroecology is not the agroecological process and transition, and the whole holistic approach is not known in the country as such. In the country are known the agri-environmental practices, which are associated with subsidies. And actually, this project and our whole involvement in this project, I think, helped us, and we hoped helped us introduce this holistic approach in Bulgaria and broadened our, but not only our, understanding what agroecological transition is, from moving from the field practices and agri-environmental and farmers practices only to the whole food system. And I think we do believe that we have been able, to a very small extent maybe, but for sure we have made a step forward in our country in understanding this process and the meaning of the agroecology.
Okay. Um, yeah, I will really elaborate on this because I think something really important for us is also related to this agroecology-TRANSECT scale, is that being part of this international project and having such different innovation hubs. You saw in Bertrand's presentation that there are really different kind of innovation hubs based on grasslands, based on arables, more social oriented or more practices oriented. And having all of these different innovation hubs really helps to think about what we are doing, what part of agroecology we are working on, but also what part of agroecology we are not really developing in our innovation hub in comparison with others. And I think it's something we can do. We would struggle to do without these moments where we can really share together. So I think it's really something important. And on a more local scale, more at the innovation hub scale, we were both we had farmers. We have our own organization, which is kind of a link between research and farmers, and also we have the CRA, which is really the research institute that really helps. Working all together really gives different way of looking at what's going on, and yeah, really give a deep comprehension of what we can do, and also brings new expectations. It's not always easy to work together, but still having these different views is really rich at the innovation hub scale.
Thank you. I'm happy that nobody said what I wanted to say. Uh, yes, so I think that the benefits of the project and the work package 3 can be quite different in the different context, in the different innovation hubs, because for example, in our case, even though our innovation hub runs from 2022, I was a relatively new hire back then when this project started, and I have had a very heavily scientific background and scientific mindset, and this project helped me to to acquire new insights and new dimensions in which I can work, in which I can engage with farmers at farmer workshops. Because even though we had regular farmer workshops and we got into a discussion with them in every workshop, the format was completely different. Now it's a more equal and more spontaneous, and sometimes it's more structured. Therefore, we can get much more from the farmers. We can have a better connection with them, and yeah, I think it's very important benefit of the project.
Yeah, thank you. Very diverse answers, but I think that underlines how diverse the innovation hubs are in the project, and that every one of you has different experiences throughout the years. Are there questions from the audience regarding what was been said? Matteo.
Thank you so much. I actually wanted to rectify and clarify what I said, because what Viara mentioned earlier is totally in line with agroecology. It's about communities, scientists together deciding on result indicators. And myself have been part of the Barren project in Ireland, working on result-based payments. It's a different story from results that are decided by a vertical top-down actor telling how you should measure certain things, and there is no community involvement, there is no participation. So it's a different story. And I think what you are doing in Bulgaria, and there are many, many good practices in Europe, merge together result with action as well. We go in a hybrid approach because we want to be honest with the farmers and those who are not using chemicals, those who are not. So I didn't want to say I'm against result-based payments, but I'm concerned of the derive of this, or la dérive, comment dire, how this logic can actually deviate from the actual transformation. But honestly, these are very good cases. Thanks, Viara.
Thank you. Just one curiosity. It was said that innovation hubs existed 4 years before the project, and were they coined as innovation hubs, or did you use another term, or another term came in finally? Thank you.
Yeah, to add to that, it was at least 4 years, so that was like our requirement. Yeah. Do you want to answer, or?
I think they are different names for more or less one and the same thing which we want to achieve. So in our case, we started like a partnership group. So in our first activities in the region, we operate in West Stara Planina. What we actually wanted to achieve, to have this actionable knowledge, is to create a partnership group between farmers, researchers, and representatives of the societies. And then we built on this partnership group, and we try to involve and enlarge this partnership group in our region. And then we become, not within this project, but in a project before, we become an innovative center, innovative hub, which actually cannot be translated in Bulgarian language as such, you know. So this is also something which is very important. And we continue to develop this hub. But I mean, there are different contexts, but the meaning is one and the same in what we are trying.
Before the project, we considered ourselves an on-farm network with a living lab approach. Yeah, basically that's it.
I think it's kind of joining. We did not really. I was not there at the beginning, so it's what I know about it, I guess. But still, the group of farmers really just consider itself as a group. So how we call it between us with the farmers is just like group ABC for organic conservation farming, because it's what they are working on. And so it's basically how they refer to it for farmers, like innovation hub or living lab or something, doesn't mean really something, you know. What brings them together is really this question of organic conservation farming. So I think really on the field, that's what's important and what we mean through it.
Costin, you also have
Thank you, Costin Liano. It's Ihabio Danubius. I'm here with a farmer, organic farmer. So we started together 2015 as a cluster. As a cluster, according to the cluster orientation of innovation, but also very much focused on exports and business models, because that was the request from our farmers to guide them to foreign markets, to do business. And then we came, how we came here, we came because we understood innovation in organic. We are members of IFOAM-EU, but it was interest for us to understand better how agroecology, it's as a movement, and how we can incorporate organic farming into agroecology. We learned a lot based on that. We are working on our scheme, voluntary scheme. We called it BioPlus. And also, when I start to say what is still missing, I think what is still missing, it's the trade-offs of these indicators and how we can translate nature services into business models.
Yeah, let's talk about that in a minute.
I just want to add something on this question. I think that most, as Darlene put it, most of the innovation hubs, they had experience more than 4 years at least before. And this was actually crucial when we were trying to develop, to have their opinion and to develop the indicators for the stream 2, because you know, confidence, to gain the confidence of the farmers and to give the confidence of the stakeholders and the community takes time. It cannot happen over 1 year or 2 years or with one project only. They need to understand that you will be there for them and you will work with them. I mean, that is what matters.
Yeah, very important addition. Thanks, Viara. Let's move to the second question. What do you think are the main challenges or the barriers that you perceived especially in the last years on how to move when you move forward in the agroecological transition? What are your ideas, Tamas?
Thank you. Well, the constant barrier we are facing is a capacity issue, that we want to do much more than we are capable of. Right now, I should have been on the field to make vegetation surveys, because I'm a bit late with them, and there's a drought event, and yeah, never mind. So this is one issue that always, yes, it's a problem. And well, even though we have very good results regarding ecosystem services, and we think that our approach, that this interro-greening approach is a very useful method in agroecological practices, we don't always feel that it reaches the decision makers' mind, ears, even though we try to reach out to them on a regular basis. Yeah. So we definitely have to learn how to engage with them better.
Okay, I continue. I give you just right after. Yeah, I think what I wanted to say also relates to what you said before about this short-term perspective of the project system. I really yeah, agree with you that farmers need to know that you will be there if there are any question, reflection, or will to search for something, not only for 3 or 4 years, but for the coming years, because they are engaging in a job that is for lifetime, and so they can't relate on always changing environment, you know. And that's really hard to achieve with always changing projects. So I think that's a big challenge that we can really identify. Yeah, and another one is more about how the diversity of perceptions between different actors is sometimes hard to bring together. But yeah, that's a more general reflection.
It's a risk that I will repeat a little bit what Tamas said, but I think that in general, what we are struggling with and we are trying to overcome is the lack of engagement. I may say the lack of engagement or little engagement of the institutions. And that comes together with the limited support, which will be decreasing, as we know, for the real agroecological practices, and not some kind of greenwashing, not some kind of we have to do this and we have to, like they like to say, absorb the money, you know, but to support the real ones, the real agroecological ones. So this is, I think, although we are very different in the innovation hubs, and we are targeting different farming systems, I think this is one thing which is common for all of us.
Yeah, thank you. Do you recognize the lack of support from institutions or from organizations as well? Is that something that you also experienced?
Yeah, I think we really felt this really hard in Belgium. I think it's Matteo who told about this changes in policy in Belgium, and that was really a period we felt so hard that there is this lack of real will. We have the chance to still be recognized for what we do as an institution, but I know it's not the case of everyone around of us, and we really struggled a little bit during this period, not knowing. We were a team of 10 people, and we were just, okay, how many of us will stay for the next year? And it was like, in the worst case scenario, 2 people. So still, yeah, quite a lot of questions, and we really feel that it can be hard for people to continue to get engaged and to get a strong commitment to agroecology in such a perspective.
Yeah, so it gives a lack of security for a long term, this situation. Yeah, thank you. Is there someone who would like to ask a question or a comment from the audience? If not, we move to the last question. Now let's talk about, okay, we have addressed the different challenges that we see, right? So now how can we move forward? What can be done to overcome these challenges? What is necessary for that? What are your thoughts on that, Viara?
Yeah, I wanted to say something which we have learned in this project, but also in another project which started just a year ago. I think La Feria project, we have a lot of representatives here. And I think that one thing which really matters and which we have tested in practice with Agroecology-TRANSECT is the existence of the local data sets. The local data sets for different indicators, because the situation is different when it is aggregated at the European level. And if you have these local data sets, and if you are gathering the necessary or the indicators which you believe you can gather, because it's not that easy, you know, but to have a local data sets really can change the situation and can make you prove and bring evidence that something exists or does not exist in your country. So this is one thing which is still missing, at least in our country. And the other thing this is one thing, and the other thing is that there is still, how to say, a gap, and a gap between research, farmers, and advisory and extension service, and on the top of this, on the policy, with the policy makers. So if all of these groups continue to work in silos separately, nothing will happen. So this gap, we have to work towards bridging up this gap or overcoming it as a whole. So
Thank you, because I wanted to say similar things. So maybe it's okay if I wrap it up. So these last things that why we are mentioned is the things that we are also missing. We still have to bridge the different actors and stakeholders, and we are, yeah. After this will happen, I think we will be good to go. But I'm pretty sure that that will be a quite long process.
Yeah, and on a more uh, I would say practical way, really about working with farmers. I think there is a lot of things to think about in how we work all together with farmers and research. And we did quite big improvements also with Agroecology-TRANSECT and the different innovation hubs. We tried quite a lot of interesting way of collaborating, but still there are quite a lot of things to do. Also about just how do we help farmers that are taking risks for innovation? How do we work with them? How do we recognize that what they do is not just producing food, but also doing research? How do we insert this in the way we think about how we build the projects? And I think having more helpful policies around of it about what we could do or not, how we can pay them for what they do or not, would be a really, really big help to really get them into this research projects, not only as data providers, but also just as people acting directly.
one thing which I missed, because I'm checking my notes, is that something which we are trying to also to say and to bring to the policy, to the decision makers, the constantly changing policy framework is not in favor of developing something. You know, it's each 7 years, they are not even 7, they are less because of the programming period and then the start of implementation, etc. Every time something new comes, it was the green payments, after that the eco schemes. Now we are heading toward a very new you know, one and all plan and what will happen with this plan. So it takes time for the policymakers to understand it. And when it comes to the farmers, you can imagine that the moment they become accustomed, or they see the benefits or not see the benefits, whatever, to a certain practice or to a certain scheme, and then it is changed, you know, and then they have to start again. So I think that this is also something which has to be set, you know, on certainty, you know, to be sure that when you start doing something, it will continue, because it helps you planning your whole development, the farm development in the future, and your personal development as well.
Yeah, thanks for the addition. There's a comment from Kostin.
What we can do is to harmonize the playing level at the European level, because we have different approaches. So we have France with giving incentives to the farmers to get certification, and we have Romania where we do not have too much incentives. Even we have more tough sanctions on the organic farmers. And I have here an example with me. So tough sanctions, very tough, and sometimes discriminatory for the farmers. So if you have this playing field not regulated at the European level and leave all the member states to do what they want and to do what the ministries want, so we don't have agroecology in Europe.
Thank you. Camille, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it's something I wanted to add, also related to what Stefan presented just before, is that most of the research is more oriented to kind of a short-term perspective. But if we really want significant shifts and with a more long-term and radical changes, we really need to support this, because we realized also with the different innovation hubs, and that if you want to do to make research on the whole redesign of the system, then it's really hard to do in the actual context, and you have to do it on a really small niche plots. And if you want to work on more like it was more, I was, mainstream is not a word, but you know, with more global aspects, then you are directly facing this limit of not being able to go further. That's what we experimented in Belgium with kind of really hard. We did this really strong experimentation of organic conservation farming, which is kind of something really hard to achieve technically, but you can't achieve it if you don't go further on the whole value chain after. So yeah, we really have to think about all of this and really take this into account. Sorry for being not that clear.
Want to react?
Thank you. Referring to topic number 3, I was wondering whether there are maybe some missing guests or missing links. I'm thinking about what Viara mentioned about civil society, citizens, how we approach them, what are the entry points, I would say. There's also maybe an overall connections or misconnections between policy, social movements, civil society, and maybe that's maybe food for thought, but for the future, I don't know whether you're sensitive to it or you approach it, but I think that's something to consider. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a short thing, and maybe also food companies and the others in the retail sector. Because clearly, there's, as you've identified, if we just look at farmers, we're not going to get anywhere, because the money is being captured in the middle of the value chain. So it'd be very important to keep them in. Maybe just kind of just piggyback, just because you were mentioning that we need predictability for farmers. I completely agree. But then the current cap, the way the schemes are designed, in particular eco schemes, oftentimes it's extremely low ambition. In some countries, it's almost zero ambition. So you do need some changes there. So for me, there's also this, it's very hard to play with both. So yeah, if you have a reply on this.
Yeah, I do agree that changes and adjustments are needed and that there should be a very good flexibility. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the changes in the I mean, what happened with the greening first and then the eco schemes, you know, the new introduction, everyone thought, oh, eco schemes is going to be better, but it is not, you know, so it's, so maybe it's better to try to focus on how to make the instrument work, you know, and not to change it totally. I don't know. I don't have an answer or a solution, but one thing which actually even I, as a member of a society, don't want to see and don't want to follow is the constant changes in the framework, you know, because there is a saying that it if you don't know the law, it doesn't allow you not to follow it or whatever, you know. So it takes time, it takes understanding, it takes skills, and especially when we want to achieve something for the environment, it takes time, you know. It's, you know, so each 5 years changing it.
So you're coming from Guy?
What I'm hearing is that we need to probably expand what works and abolish what doesn't work. But I'm also like, I would like to reflect for a moment on the fact that we are in Brussels at the moment. And there's no one from the Commission, for instance, from Hansen's cabinet, despite a lot of efforts. Nobody from the members of the parliament currently negotiating. But at least this event is being recorded and can be placed online. So I would like to ask you, what are your pleas to the most relevant actors you think can change something? So we do have the policy brief that Stephen was presenting from the barriers. We've tried in Brussels in November to present to members of the parliament. What are your pleas based on this fragmentation that you're seeing and the lack of capacities and like the need for continuity, etc.? So what would you like to ask for?
Yeah, I think we have to be really clear about what we want, because like today, the global context is really confused, and we have all kind of contradiction, and there is no consistency in what we want. We can't say we want to promote local, but we are working for globalization, and we want to promote innovations, but we are putting really strict legislation and frameworks. We can't say like we want to promote farmers' work, so we will develop the expert pool, because what we need is farmers mainly. But also we can't say we want agroecology, but we don't give money for it. Like. So it's a really political decision. What do we want? And if you don't want agroecology, then don't give money for it. But really, I think it's not what I just can't even imagine you could think this, because just it's such an evidence right now. We have plenty of papers, we have plenty of evidence that's just like agroecology is a real path for the future, that is like bringing together people, nature, environment, and food production. And so if we want this, then we have to take it into account in the whole global reflection on policies, and not just like how much money will we give for this little project or this little project.
I will say only one thing, and it is that agroecology is in the political agenda, but only in paper. Please make it real. That's my plea.
Thank you. That's a good one. So we have to go to a coffee break, but I'm looking at Stephen. Maybe you would like to give your a couple of reflections on what you have heard.
Yeah, I can just wrap it up with some themes that I think were woven throughout that. So I think the theme of time was a really a common one. So first we had the benefits from the learning platform. And I think one of the biggest benefits of that was creating time for these innovation hubs and facilitators in particular to step back from their daily activities and just give devoted time for them to reflect, to be challenged and think deeply and about what they're doing and why. So that was in terms of the benefits. And then in terms of the challenges, again, the time theme came back in terms of not enough time. So Tomas mentioned capacity and VR as well, and also Camille with the project cycles, the short-term demands. While trying to work on long-term problems, you have basically all these short-term demands that you keep needing to be chasing around, and everything just gets kicked down the road. And yeah, the lack of support as well. So that also came back at the end there. But the lack of support is a big thing. And I think there we need to think about how do we build social majorities and how do we see this transdisciplinary process not as the driver of change, but as one sort of key element in a wider ecology of change and collective action. And then, a final thing was about boundary spanning and these gaps between actors that's missing. So finding out how can we enable that boundary spanning. And that's one thing I wanted to ask as well for you all, but I don't know if we have time, but the question of boundary spanning came up for Tomas and Viara in particular. And you mentioned it as something that was missing, but my question is, in your roles, what would you need in order to be those agents of boundary spanning and leading these processes of deep change?
Yes, this is a question maybe emerged in a different form already during the co-innovation workshops, that not every innovation hubs are devoted to change the whole system, production system, and actually to us specifically, maybe it would be an aim if we have more socio-economical focus, or at least to have it at all. And because we are all of the members of our innovation hub are geeks of their own stuff or own craft, we mainly want to do that. So this is a thing that is missing, and this would bring us forward. We will see if we can add it in the future.
Okay, so thank you very much. Let's have a coffee, and if you want to talk to our Innovation Hub facilitator, of course you can talk to them in the coffee break still. So.